What if I told you Errol Flynn's Virginia City was about a divided America trying to find its way back to unity, while the movie itself was made in the middle of its own little civil war? Behind the gold shipment and frontier spectacle were rain, script problems, studio pressure, clashing personalities, and one of Humphrey Bogart's strangest roles. Released in 1940, with the world already at war and America still on the sidelines, Virginia City turned the Civil War into a comforting national myth. It was a film about reunion, born from pressure and conflict. Let's count down 20 fascinating facts about the Warner Brothers Western that turned chaos into a golden age spectacle. Number 20. Warner Brothers was trying to turn Errol Flynn into a Western hero. By 1940, Errol Flynn was already one of Warner Brothers' great adventure stars. He had sailed through Captain Blood, led through the adventures of Robin Hood, and become one of the studio's most reliable symbols of romantic action. But Virginia City came at a key moment. After the success of Dodge City in 1939, Warner Brothers wanted to prove that Flynn did not need pirate ships, castles, or green tides to carry a spectacle. He could ride a horse, wear a uniform, and bring that same reckless charm to the frontier. According to the American Film Institute, several key Dodge City collaborators returned for Virginia City, including Flynn, director Michael Curtiz, writer Robert Buckner, and cinematographer Saul Polito, and editor George Amy. AFI also lists Max Steiner as the film's composer. This was not just another Western, it was Warner Brothers asking a very practical question. Could Flynn's swashbuckling magic be turned into Western gold? Number 19. The movie came during an almost unbelievable Flynn-Curtiz year. To modern viewers, 3 Flynn-Curtiz films in 1 year sounds almost impossible, but this was Warner Brothers moving at factory speed. Turner Classic Movies notes that Flynn and Michael Curtiz made 12 pictures together between 1935 and 1941, and Virginia City was the first of 3 Flynn-Curtiz films released in 1940 alone. The others were The Seahawk and Santa Fe Trail. That was not an accident. Flynn was a contract star. Warner Brothers needed product. Theaters needed new pictures. Audiences wanted familiar faces, and when a formula worked, the studio moved fast. So in one extraordinary year, Flynn rode through Virginia City, sailed through the Seahawk, and marched into Santa Fe Trail. By today's standards, it feels excessive. By 1940 studio standards, it was business. And that pressure matters because Virginia City is a film about conflict made inside a system that never stopped moving. Number 18. Michael Curtiz brought the full Warner Brothers engine with him. Michael Curtiz was one of the directors who helped define the Warner Brothers house style. Fast pacing, big shadows, hard driving action, emotional melodrama. A sense that the camera itself was pushing the story forward. By the time he made Virginia City, Curtiz had already directed Flynn in some of his most famous adventure films. And even when the material was uneven, Curtiz knew how to make a movie move. That matters here because Virginia City is not the cleanest Flynn vehicle, but it has scale, it has motion, it has dust, uniforms, prison escapes, gold shipments, cavalry energy, and an old Hollywood urgency. Curtiz may not have made Flynn's greatest Western, but he knew how to make it feel like an event. Even before the behind-the-scenes battles begin, you can feel the Warner Brothers engine roaring. Number 17. The plot turns the Civil War into a treasure hunt Western. The basic story is pure Warner Brothers adventure machinery. Flynn plays Captain Cary Bradford, a Union officer who escapes from Libby prison and becomes involved in stopping a Confederate gold shipment. Miriam Hopkins plays Julia Hayne, a saloon singer secretly working for the Southern cause. Randolph Scott plays Vance Irby, the Confederate officer trying to move the gold. And it is worth noting, these central characters appear to be fictional creations, built for the movie's adventure plot. The exception, sort of, is Bogart's John Murrell, whose name comes from a real outlaw legend, though the film reshapes that history into Hollywood myth. According to AFI's synopsis, the film centers on a massive gold shipment meant to help the Confederacy late in the Civil War. So the movie is not just a Western, it is a war picture, a spy story, a chase film, a romance, and a treasure mission all rolled into one. But that gold shipment is doing more than moving the plot. It lets Warner Brothers turn national division into adventure. On screen, North and South are enemies, but the film keeps framing courage, sacrifice, and honor as things both sides can understand. That is the myth underneath the action. The conflict is real. The reunion is possible. Number 16. Flynn is not really playing a cowboy. Here is one of the interesting twists. In Virginia City, Flynn is not a wandering gunslinger or a frontier marshal. He is a Union intelligence officer. That gives the movie a different flavor from a traditional Western. Flynn's Cary Bradford is less lonely man with a gun and more military hero dropped into the West. That also explains why the film feels like a bridge between genres. It has the landscapes and outlaw energy of a Western, but it also has the divided loyalties and wartime urgency of a Civil War drama. Warner Brothers was not simply copying Dodge City. It was dressing Flynn's adventure image in a new kind of uniform, and using that image to make a divided America feel thrilling, heroic, and somehow survivable. That is one of the film's quiet tricks. It turns a complicated national wound into a star vehicle audiences could cheer. Number 15. Olivia de Havilland is missing, and that is noticeable. If you're watching Virginia City as a Flynn fan, one question may pop up quickly. Where is Olivia de Havilland? After Dodge City, audiences might have expected the Flynn de Havilland pairing to continue here, but Virginia City went in a different direction. Turner Classic Movies notes that the role of Julia Hayne was developed with Ann Sheridan in mind, before Miriam Hopkins ultimately played it. So we should be careful here. There is no need to invent a story that de Havilland personally passed because she was making too many films. The stronger point is that Warner Brothers was experimenting with Flynn's secret formula. De Havilland was not gone from Flynn's 1940 world for long. She reunited with him later that same year in Santa Fe Trail. But in Virginia City, the romantic energy belongs to Miriam Hopkins, and that gives the film a different, more theatrical flavor. It is a small casting change, but it reminds us that Warner Brothers was still testing how far Flynn's formula could stretch. Number 14. Randolph Scott may be the most natural Western star in the movie. Here's where the casting gets fascinating. Errol Flynn is the star, but Randolph Scott may be the actor who feels most at home in the Western landscape. Scott plays Vance Irby, the Confederate officer at the center of the gold mission. Watching him today, it is easy to see the future, the calm, upright, deeply Western screen presence that would later make him one of the genre's great stars. TCM points out that Scott seems especially natural in the film's Western world. That gives Virginia City a hidden career history angle. Flynn is still Warner Brothers' adventure king, but Scott looks like a man already riding toward his destiny. And that matters to the movie's message. If Flynn represents the Union hero, Scott gives the Confederate side dignity, resolve, and presence. The film's national reunion myth needs both men to seem honorable. The paradox is that Flynn carries the movie, but Scott may carry the Western atmosphere. Number 13. Flynn might have played the Randolph Scott role. Now here's a great wait what detail. According to Turner Classic Movies, the role of Vance Irby, the Confederate officer eventually played by Randolph Scott, was originally conceived for Errol Flynn. That would have changed the whole movie. Instead of playing the Union officer trying to stop the gold shipment, Flynn might have played the man trying to move it. That version could have leaned even harder into Flynn's dangerous charm, but the final casting gives the film more useful balance. Flynn is the dashing Union hero, Scott is the noble Confederate rival, and Hopkins caught between romance, loyalty, and history. It also strengthens the movie's myth-making. The film is not simply staying one side has all the courage. It is building a dramatic fantasy where the honor exists across the battle line. That is why the casting matters. It is not just about who got which part. It changes the moral shape of the movie. Number 12. Humphrey Bogart was known, but not yet the Bogart of legend. And now we have to talk about Bogart. Yes, that Bogart. But Virginia City was not one of his first movies. By 1940, Bogart had already been working in films for about a decade, and Warner Brothers audiences likely knew him as a familiar tough guy presence. But he was not yet Bogart the legend. That came 1 year later with High Sierra and the Maltese Falcon, so Virginia City catches him in a strange in-between moment. Recognizable, experienced, and still not fully formed as the icon we remember today. Here, he plays John Murrell, a bandit with a pencil-thin mustache and a performance that can feel startling now. And if you have seen Bogart in Virginia City, you probably remember the mustache. If you have not, just wait. It is one of the strangest before they became legends moments in Warner Brothers history. TCM describes Bogart as severely, though amusingly, miscast in the role. But that does not mean Warner Brothers intended the role as comedy. The fun today is not mocking him. It is catching Hollywood in the act of figuring him out. Number 11. Bogart's miscasting is part of what makes the film valuable today. That is why Bogart's strange role is more than a curiosity. Today, we know where he was headed. Sam Spade, Rick Blaine, and one of the most famous screen images in movie history. But here, Warner Brothers was still experimenting. Classic Hollywood built stars by trial and error. Sometimes it found the perfect role. Sometimes it gave Humphrey Bogart a mustache that sent him into a Western. And that is what makes Virginia City so revealing. Bogart's miscasting lets us see stardom before it hardens into legend. The same studio that could turn the Civil War into a national reunion myth could also misjudge one of its future icons. That is the beautiful contradiction of old Hollywood. Astonishing craft, bold instinct, and sometimes very strange choices. And in a movie about conflict and unity, Bogart adds one more layer. Even the cast is pulling in unexpected directions, yet somehow the Warner Brothers machine keeps the whole thing moving. Number 10. The supporting cast is pure Warner Brothers comfort food. One of the pleasures of Virginia City is the familiar faces. AFI lists a strong supporting cast that includes Frank McHugh, Alan Hale, Gwen Big Boy Williams, John Liedl, Douglas Dumbrill, Maroney Olson, and others. For Flynn fans, Alan Hale is especially welcome. Hale had been part of Flynn's adventure film world before, and his presence gives the movie an immediate sense of camaraderie. Even when the story moves through the Civil War intrigue and Nevada Gold, Hale helps make it feel like part of the broader Flynn-Warner universe. That is the power of Golden Age studio casting. The audience was not just watching one movie. They were returning to a whole company of familiar faces. And in a film about a divided nation, those familiar Warner Brothers faces helped make the danger feel like the entertainment instead of a history lecture. Number 9. Max Steiner helped turn conflict into unity. Now here is where the Warner Brothers machine almost becomes unbelievable. Max Steiner did not just write background music. He helped give Virginia City its emotional glue. AFI credits Steiner with the music for Virginia City. TCM describes Steiner as a prolific, tireless artist who worked on more than 300 film scores over his long career, while Britannica calls him one of the first and finest movie composers and lists several of his landmark scores, including King Kong, Gone with the Wind, Now, Voyager, and The Big Sleep. That matters because Virginia City is full of things pulling against each other. North and South, romance and duty, history and Hollywood myth, polished spectacle and backstage chaos. Steiner's job was to make all of that feel like one sweeping emotional ride. And here's the fascinating part. When we say Max Steiner scored the film, that does not mean one lonely man sat in a room handwriting every note for every instrument by himself. Golden Age Studios had music departments. Composers, orchestrators, arrangers, copyists, conductors, and musicians working at speed. So Steiner's genius was not isolated. It was plugged into a factory. He came from a theatrical world, worked inside one of Hollywood's most demanding studios, and somehow helped turn pressure into melody. That is a deeper connection to Virginia City. A movie about division needed music that could make division feel romantic, dramatic, and finally unified. In other words, Steiner was not just scoring the action, he was helping the film believe in its own myth. Number 8. Sol Polito helped give the chaos a visual shape. And Steiner was not the only craftsman carrying an enormous load. AFI credits Sol Polito as the cinematographer on Virginia City, and AFI's credits also show Polito photographed Santa Fe Trail that same year. AFI's The Seahawk entry also credits Polito as cinematographer. That means he helped shape the look of Flynn's major 1940 Curtiz cycle, riding through Nevada, sealing against Spain, and marching through pre-Civil War myth. While Steiner gave Virginia City its emotional sweep, Polito gave it shape, movement, shadow, and atmosphere. That division of labor is part of what makes Golden Age Hollywood so fascinating. One artist helps the audience feel the conflict, another helps the audience see it. The director drives the machine. The star sells the romance and danger. The studio keeps the whole thing moving. In a film like Virginia City, the craftsmanship is not just decoration. It is how chaos becomes legible. And that is what studio craft often did best. It made complexity feel like momentum. Number 7. It was not another technicolor Dodge City. This is an important contrast. Dodge City had used technicolor to give Flynn's first major western a bright, spectacular glow. Virginia City, however, was released in black and white with sepia elements, according to AFI. There does not seem to be a clear surviving production note saying exactly why Warner Brothers chose sepia rather than full technicolor, so the safest explanation is practical. Technicolor was expensive, more complicated, and usually reserved for films where color itself was a major selling point. So Virginia City had to create a frontier spectacle the old-fashioned way, through Curtiz pacing, Polito's photography, Steiner's music, and Warner Brothers' scale. It did not have the blazing color of Dodge City, but the sepia tone may have helped give it a period feeling, as if the movie were already turning itself into a legend. That is another small paradox. Less visual luxury may have given the film a more old photo sense of history. Number 6. The film premiered in the real Virginia City. Here is one of the most charming old Hollywood details. AFI lists a Virginia City, Nevada premiere on March 16, 1940, with the general release following on March 23rd. That was a classic studio showmanship. Warner Brothers did not just release Virginia City, they sent it back to Virginia City. Studios knew that when a film was tied to a famous place, the premiere itself could become part of the myth. A local opening gave newspapers a story, gave the town a celebration, and gave audiences the feeling that the movie had one boot in Hollywood and one boot in a real Western history. Warner Brothers had used similar event-style thinking with Dodge City, where AFI says that the studio chartered a special 16-car train carrying at least 36 reporters to the film's Dodge City premiere. That was not just marketing, it was myth-making, turning a movie release into a piece of frontier pageantry. The film borrowed the town's history, and then the premiere gave the town a little Hollywood history in return. Number 5. The production fought its own weather war. Now we get to one of the great texture details behind the sparkle. A Western should look rugged, but making this one apparently felt rugged too. Turner Classic Movies reports that steady rain fell for 2 of the 3 weeks of location shooting near Flagstaff, Arizona. TCM also notes that the film was plagued by script, production, and personnel problems, and that Flynn complained when shooting again before the script was finished. That is a major clue as to why the film sometimes feels crowded. There's a lot happening. Prison escape, romance, Confederate gold, outlaw interference, military pursuit, divided loyalties. The movie is entertaining, but you can feel the machinery straining. And the rain gives all that pressure a physical shape. Wet costumes, miserable conditions, delays, and a star who is not exactly enjoying the frontier experience. So when you watch Virginia City, remember, some of the Western grit was not acting. The story about a country under pressure, the production was a movie under pressure. The world outside the theater was under pressure too. A divided nation, a divided team, a divided world. And somehow, Warner Brothers turned all that tension into entertainment. That is what makes Virginia City more than a lesser Flynn Western. It is not just a movie with flaws. It is a movie whose flaws reveal how Hollywood myth-making worked. Number 4. Flynn and Curtiz were a brilliant but combustible team. The Flynn-Curtiz partnership gave classic Hollywood some wonderful films, but it was not always warm and friendly. TCM reports that Flynn disliked Curtiz and even tried to have him removed from Virginia City. It also notes that Curtiz did not care much for Flynn or Miriam Hopkins. That is a classic Hollywood paradox. A star and director can clash badly and still create memorable screen entertainment. Curtiz was the demanding craftsman who helped shape Flynn's greatest adventure image. Flynn was the restless star who hated being pushed around. And here's the irony. A movie about divided loyalties and a national conflict was being made by a team divided in its own tensions. On screen, Virginia City imagined enemies finding honor across battle lines. Behind the scenes, the star and the director could barely find peace on the set. Number 3. The Flynn-Curtiz partnership was nearing the end. Flynn and Curtiz did not part ways because of one single confirmed dramatic incident, at least not from the evidence we have. It was more like a partnership that had burned hot for years. By the time of Virginia City, the tension was already showing. After Dive Bomber in 1941, their long run together ended. TCM describes the Flynn-Curtiz partnership as running from The Case of the Curious Bride to Dive Bomber, and both men moved into different phases. Curtiz went on to direct major Warner Brothers films including Casablanca, Yankee Doodle Dandy, and Mildred Pierce. Flynn continued in more films and adventure pictures, including Desperate Journey, Edge of Darkness, Northern Pursuit, and Objective Burma. So Virginia City now feels like part of the late-stage Flynn-Curtiz story. The magic was still there, but so was the strain. And knowing that makes the film more interesting. We are not just watching another adventure, we are watching a great creative partnership near the end of its run. Number 2. Seen in its 1940 moment, the film carries a powerful pre-war message. Virginia City was released in March 1940. The world was already at war, but America had not yet entered it. So Warner Brothers reached backward into the Civil War and turned national division into adventure mythology. The film was not really asking audiences to study history. It was asking them to feel something many Americans in 1940 may have needed to believe. The country had been torn apart before, and somehow it had survived the storm. Behind the gold shipment, the prison escape, and the frontier spectacle, Virginia City can be read as selling something bigger than a Western. The conflict is real, the reunion is possible. That is why the film is more interesting than its reputation. It is a movie about a divided nation, made by a divided team, released into a divided world. Number 1. Its real legacy is the conflict behind the glamour. So what does Virginia City finally reveal? It reveals Golden Age Hollywood in motion, a difficult production, a tense director-star partnership, a rain-soaked location shoot, and some very strange casting, all shaped into a movie people are still talking about more than 80 years later. It may not have the perfection of Robin Hood, the color of Dodge City, or sweep of the Seahawk, but Virginia City has something else, the beautiful messiness of the studio system at work. Flynn was trying to become a Western star. Curtiz was driving another big Warner Brothers production. Randolph Scott looked born for the saddle. Bogart appeared before the legend fully arrived. Steiner pulled divided emotions into one musical current. Polito gave the chaos shape. The film asks audience to believe that conflict can lead back to unity. And in its own imperfect way, the production echoes that idea. Behind the sparkle, Virginia City shows us old Hollywood still experimenting, still struggling, and still giving audiences a show. So the next time you watch Virginia City, don't just watch the gold shipment. Watch the studio machine. Watch Flynn carrying his adventure star image into the West. Watch Randolph Scott quietly looking like the future of the genre. Watch Bogart before the legend fully arrived. Watch Steiner pull divided emotions into one musical current. Watch Polito give the chaos visual shape. And watch Michael Curtiz turn a troubled, rain-soaked production into something big enough, glossy enough, and strange enough to survive. That is the magic of these Golden Age time capsules. They are not always perfect, but sometimes the imperfections are what make the story behind them even better. If you enjoyed this look behind the sparkle of Virginia City, please give the video a like, subscribe to Flashback Rewind, and tell me in the comments, which is your favorite Errol Flynn Western? Dodge City, Virginia City, Santa Fe Trail, or another Flynn adventure entirely?